What's up, guys? Kelly McKay here. And alongside me, Mr. Pete Ramsey. We are here to talk HVAC and whatever else comes up, right, Pete?
Yeah,
Like, we're pretty flexible. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to talk about, Kelly. And
always.
yeah, with everything that's going on in this crazy, crazy world, I got one for you. So this guy says, okay, let's say that you got your own small business, and oh gosh, I'm afraid I'm gonna offend somebody. It don't matter. I'm not, guys. If I offend you, I don't mean it personally. I just thought it was funny. So he
He totally
says,
means it personally. So take it personal now.
don't call me with hate. Don't send me hate email. So the guy says if you have your business and you can do government work and they use minority owned contractors such as women and stuff, you call in the government, you bid on that job and tell them you identify as a woman or this, that, the other, and
Yeah.
dare them to say anything. See if you can't bid on the job. Thought that was great.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
all the stuff going on. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. But so yeah,
Pretty
we got to
good.
get out there and make it happen. So here we are in the middle of September, and sometimes we slow down.
Some parts of the country I know are still plenty warm and will be through
Oh
October,
yeah,
or
good
kind of
point.
spotty on and off through October.
Good point.
Other parts like us here, man, it's 75 degrees right now, mostly cloudy. It's beautiful outside. It's been beautiful in the mornings. Gets just, 80 during the day, 85. So it's been really nice weather for the last couple of weeks, or last week and a half, I'd say.
I got one for you. So I was a new business owner, and my sister was my office manager, and we were slow. And I said, why don't we take off the rest of the day and let's go catch a movie, middle of the day. Guys, this is not a recommendation. Okay. So she says, let's do it, because we really worked hard. We worked a lot of overtime and everything. So we were slow. We headed to the movie theaters. We go in and we sit down, and these people are coming in behind us. And middle of the week, middle of the day, I see the silhouette come down and sitting down in front of us a couple of seats, but off to the other side of the aisle. It was our TM from Bryant. He's supposed to be out there calling on dealers, and he's in the movie theater watching the movie. And when the movie was over, and I let him walk by, and I come up, put my arm around him. I said, "Hey, buddy, what you doing here, man?" He was red. He got out of there fast, but I never said anything. I didn't want to get him in trouble, but I just thought that was funny. So if you're wondering why your TM doesn't call you back,
manager. That's what I was going to say. Maybe he's just in a movie, or she's just in a movie.
Right?
Maybe they're not quite as busy as they sometimes pretend to be. Put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. But I was a territory manager too, Kelly, for a while. Don't know if I ever told you that. First I was technical support / TM for American Standard, really briefly, after I sold my business. But I didn't. It was a distributor. It was a wholesaler. It wasn't the actual manufacturer. And then Lennox had a slot open. I jumped all over that. So I became a territory manager, and that was fun. That was good. That was got to go and see all of these different businesses, and you think you got it all figured out. You see the way other people run. I learned more, after I was in business from that advantage than I ever thought I would have.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing too, is once the business sells and you exit and you have more time to reflect as well. So even if you did go to work shortly after that, doesn't matter, because I kind of went to work shortly after that too. It doesn't matter. In your spare time and stuff, you still reflect on not only what these new things that you were learning while you're visiting these other businesses, but also just in your own head. You're thinking like, what if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? I wonder what caused this. You know what I'm saying? And so you just reflect on it, and you're trying to, I guess, like I don't have any regrets in the business or anything like that at all. It's just, I wanted to be the best. I wanted to grow my company as fast as possible. I wanted to make sure that everybody on my team was happy. And I know I made a lot of mistakes. with that type of mentality and mindset. And so I've reflected a lot since then. So I don't know if that happened to you.
I made a lot of mistakes, but mostly I was out of balance. Talking about goofing off, when I first started, we didn't have enough work. And I'd hired a kid straight out of high school. So he's 19 and I'm 29. No, he was 18. I'm 28. That's right. And so, because I just started the business a year or two before that. And so I'm training him, but he was hilarious. He could do imitations. Like he would call up the radio. So back then you listen to regular radio, and they'd have the president. Oh, the president's calling, and then it would be him, and he would do these voices, and he was so fun. Yeah. And so I had a competitor friend. His name was Ken, and he had started his business around the time we were about around the same time we did, and we would call because when he wasn't there, he had an answer machine collect all the messages because we didn't have an answering service back then. And so we would call and leave messages on his phone. And it was my employee pretending to be a celebrity who was asking for service.
Yeah.
And President Bush was the president at the time. And his wife was Barbara Bush, and he called her Barb. I don't know if you remember that. Oh, you probably do. A lot of young guys don't remember, but he was like, I can't do impressions, but he was like, yeah, Ken, Barb's getting hot over there in the Oval Office. We need to get some coolant going, and he had all the fluctuation. It was hilarious. And he tells the story. He was coming back and his machine's flashing. You have 17 messages. He was, because we were new, right? You know how it is. You want work, and you got all these messages there, and it was one after another. And instead of laughing, he was pissed, and then he laughed later. But but I used to play basketball when we were slow because that was my sport. But once I caught on to this thing and I got busy, I must have, because you do all the drive-throughs, I must have gained about 30 pounds. I mean, I had the belly. I couldn't play ball anymore. I was getting wind. I got out of balance is what I did. And it was just work. And I did the hustle.
I quickly got out of balance myself, but I didn't gain a whole bunch until I moved into the office. I definitely gained some weight when that happened. But when I was in the field, man, I was just working my tail off. I couldn't hardly keep weight on because I was working late nights and, just pushing myself on every single call. I just push myself. But you were talking about getting started and you were able to have some fun with the local competitor that you knew. Well, that's not the same game that I played when I started new. It was, I had one particular guy. I took care of this church account, and it was, I don't know, they had like 32 units or something. And I know to this day, I know where all the units are. I know how to get to all of them, because some of them you got to walk, I don't know, probably close to a half mile just to get to it, even though you're just going into the gymnasium, going up through the ladder hatch, then walking around the building, and you have to get up on this other roof. You kind of have to jump on that one. Then you jump to the other roof to get actually on the gym, things like that. And he was just, one of their big units went down. It was like a 20-ton, and that's just not my forte. And I was not comfortable changing it. I had worked on them and kept them going. I'd replaced bearings in these ginormous blower squirrel cages, replaced bearings. Is a huge Linux. So you took off the whole end of it was just a big, huge electrical compartment. And it was only about 6 or 8 inches tall and about 6 or 8 inches deep. And it's just loaded with components. And so I worked on them all the time, and I could get them going every time we had a problem. But when it came to replacing it, I was not comfortable with it. And so I let them know, and they got several bids. And one of the local competitors, I knew him because it's small town America here, so I knew him, and I saw him in the parking lot, and we were talking about how, briefly, which I hardly ever talked to him. It's not like I was friends with him. He's kind of a jerk. And so
name drop.
But he was telling me how he was telling me how, oh, this is too much for one person to take care of. This building's too much for one person to take care of. I was like, buddy, I've been taking care of this by myself for years now.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. But later I saw him in a supply house and he tried to get me to come work for him. And then my direct competitor also called me one day out of the blue. Don't even know this guy. Same guy that gives me the stink eye every time I see him in public. Before they sold, and he went to work for another company. But same with him. Called me, say, hey, you want to come join us, and
Yeah.
you don't want to have to go through all the building a business from nothing. Like, you should really just come in. I'll pay you very good, and blah blah blah. And I was like, nope, I got a dream here. I'm not
Yep.
gonna
Same thing.
sell my dream. So
Yeah.
so yeah, it wasn't met with friendly competition. There was one older gentleman who had been in business since the 60s or 70s. And this same company, that the guy who called me and always gave me the stink eye every time I see him in public, for no reason. I don't even freaking know the guy, but he just didn't like me because I was a competitor, a direct competitor. And so he, this older guy that had been in business too forever, he was super nice and friendly. And if I needed a part, he was specialized in Linux. And so every so often, like for instance, those springs and those is it whisper heats that have the automatic doors that open up every time the burner lights?
Talking about the pulse? I don't know. Whisper heat?
No, it's whisper heat. I think it's whisper heat's what they're called. They have those little springs on the side of the door, little plastic things, and they're ribbon burners,
Okay.
but the door is automatic. It's got a little motor.
Yeah, we didn't do Linux back then, so
drives it open. It was spark ignition.
yeah.
But anyhow, it'd spark ignite the pilot assembly, and then it would prove the flame, and then it would go ahead and light the burners. Well, those little springs, if you've ever pulled one of those off and had to go put it back on, if you don't do it right, you can break them. And there's no replacement for it. This spring is like so
Unique.
It's so part unique. Yeah. That I had to go to this Linux dealer to get one. He was just always the friendliest guy. And he sold me one, no problem. And we would talk and hang out. Well, eventually he got bought by this guy who gave me the stink eye all the time. And when that happened, he completely shut down. Like, he would not hardly talk to me. He wouldn't look at me. I remember being in our local Walmart one day, and I saw him come into the Walmart, and I look up and he took off. He did not want to run into me. It's just bizarre because I didn't do anything to these people.
You sure that wasn't the liquor store?
I didn't even talk trash on him or anything until later. Later, I talked trash because not to customers, but I talked, amongst us. They were my rival. I wanted them to go out of business because I did not want them to be.
I had one for you. My daughter had a regular customer. She worked at a place in a neighboring town right near my business, and the owner of the heating and air business would just stare at her, and my daughter was she's very pretty, so she got a lot of male attention, but she was bartending because she was going to nursing school, but she would bartend at night, and the guy was there, and anyway, it kind of came back around. She said, "Daddy, do you know this guy?" I don't want to say his name. He's still in business today. He's probably, and he said, I said, yeah, I know who he is. I don't think we've ever had a conversation, but I know who he is. He said, he doesn't like you. And I said, well, what happened? And he would, speaking to another person, his words were, Pete Ramsey's a piece of shit. It's real Southern down there, real redneck, and real bitter back and forth. I had no idea what I did to cross this guy. And I said, I don't know. I don't know. We didn't hardly compete because he was kind of neighboring, but he was best buddies with the service manager for the local Linux dealer. And here's what had happened. I think I told you a story before, but I'll move through it really quick. But a train would call us to clean up after other messes that the local train dealer wouldn't deal with. And we got called out on one. So we drove
Yeah.
up into another neighboring community that we didn't service, but went over there. And I looked, and as I'm pulling in, it was wintertime. The lady's in the driveway because sitting there in her car with the heat on. And she said she wanted me to go in there and get the heat started because he had a new floor furnace installed as well as a new packaged unit. He did both. He loved the old floor furnace, so he wanted to go back. And so it was a basic house. I go in, I'm looking, and it's okay. And I go around back, and the grade went down, so you could kind of just bend over to get in the crawl space. It wasn't like you had to crawl, on that end. And because there's a packaged AC there where he had added AC, but he wanted his old floor. Anyway, I look in there, and there was literally 3/8 copper tubing doing this thing all through there, running his gas pipe. It was hooked up to this floor furnace, and I'm looking at it. The vent pipe is coming over into the base of the chimney. It was not sealed up. And then I got to thinking, chimney? And I went outside and I looked, and there was no chimney. When he had re-roofed, they did away with the chimney. Well, when they went to vent, that was what was going on there. And I'm assessing everything. I walked around, and I swear this was unintentional. I'm just running, you know how you are. I'm probably 28 years old, 27 years old, just talking,
Yeah.
And I said, ma'am, I can't turn that thing on. I said, it pour poison all through your house. And she says, really? I said, yes, carbon monoxide. I said, it's not vented. You don't have the chimney. The flue gas is just going to pour all into there and, and come up through the floor or whatever. And she says, oh, I wonder if that had anything to do with my father's death. And again, I'm not thinking, it wouldn't surprise me at all, and then she bursts into tears. Her head comes on my shoulder and she's sobbing. Well, next thing I know, she is calling me, and they're having a lawsuit because they're trying to find out who put that in. And they wanted to call me in as the expert to testify in court. They exhumed the body, tested the body for carbon monoxide poisoning. And I'm backpedaling like, whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm your guy. I go into the supply house. The service manager for Lennox comes up to me and he said, this is the first, we never spoke. He's one of those guys that you just kind of see, and he's kind of a like sourpuss, I mean, he was an okay guy, but we weren't cut from the same cloth. We were just a little different. And he says, well, everybody says, oh, I kick your ass, but I figured I'd come talk to you first. My first thought is, buddy, I don't think you know who we got that pride thing on. I said, what's going on? He said, you told that lady that her dad died from carbon monoxide. I said, that was you? You did? He says, I didn't hook that up. He said, I started the job when I saw the chimney, I had to stop and we had to address that. Well, when I left, somebody came back and hooked everything up and whatever. And I said, dude, I had no, because I didn't know who did it, and it wasn't even in the market. He said, well, I did it on a side job from the company.
Yeah. And
they were best buddies. And that's how I put two and two together. That's the only thing I could think, because he thought I was just one of those guys trying to, so there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Walmart,
caught in the middle. Yeah.
The guy in the Walmart, look, he avoiding you, giving you the what do you call the stink eye.
Stink
eye.
A
lot of these guys, they just assume stupid stuff, and it's not you.
The my office or warehouse operator, he calls it the red ass. So for whatever reason, I don't even know where that comes from, or I don't know where that slang comes from. But he's like
angry, but go ahead.
yeah, like angry, like mad at somebody. He's like, oh, so and so's got the red ass for so and so. So whatever that means.
That's hilarious.
But still cracks me up when he talks about it. So that kind of made me think a little bit different situation. But it's something that happens pretty regularly. And it happened to one of our clients this week. And there's really nothing you can do about it other than just state the truth of what this really was. But what happens is customers, they get a price to do something. And then for whatever reason, the customer doesn't go ahead and move forward with it. For whatever reason, another company comes along and they do something. They basically kind of half-ass it. They don't do the thorough job. They're not And then they charge the customer, a third of the price, and they at least got it up and running, but they didn't do a thorough job, and they didn't. And so now the customer's comparing that quote that they were given to the repair that they just did. It's two completely separate things.
Sure.
And they get online, they get on social media and start talking trash about how this company is trying to rip me off and blah, blah, blah. And it literally, this happened to me. We had a blower motor. So this is a perfect example. We had a blower motor on a package unit. It was me. I was making the repair, and it was variable speed. And I needed a new module, I think is what it was. Or I think I had to replace the entire thing. And so we like coordinated, like, this is like, I don't know, Mission Impossible. It's like 4:30 and the supply house closes at 5. Yeah. It's like 4:30 and I'm a mile out of town, and I'm like 22 miles away from the supply house. And it's 4:30, and somehow we coordinate together. And I got this guy from the supply house who lives in this town. He's going to go ahead and meet one of my guys halfway. And, yeah. And so we make this happen. And the repair was going to be like $1,400. Because the motor cost us like the motor and module was over $600. I really don't think I charged enough for this call, but I did what I could. And back then I probably wasn't charging what I should have been charging, but it might've been $800, but my service call was $1,400. And a couple weeks later I get them going and everything's cool. Couple weeks later on social media, one of my team members sees somebody posting in this local page for people talking about heating and air conditioning companies. And of course, somebody's needing a repair, and this guy chimes in and says, well, don't call McKay's, don't call them. They just ripped me off. Charged me $1,400 for a blower motor. And then he goes on to say, my coworker at work said that shouldn't have cost more than $300. Of
course.
And so what can you do in that situation? Just because he's taking the coworkers, and I know the coworker's talking about like a PSC motor. He's not talking about a variable speed motor.
Of course.
So yeah, maybe we could have back then changed the blower motor for $300, but not this particular motor, because the reason it cost so much is because it was super high-end equipment. Many years ago, it was high-end equipment.
Yeah.
But what do you do other than like try to state the actual truth on there? If you could
that's
post
all you can do.
Yeah.
Kelly, the only thing worse than an ignorant customer with bad information, who feels, slighted, is an ignorant customer with a social media account and a case of the red ass.
Yes.
Now you're in trouble.
Yes, exactly. So,
what do you do? I mean,
you really have no repercussions, really. It's just like, you can get on there and try to state your case, but it's like you can't fix stupid.
Well, I've worked with a lot of people too, and there was a couple of guys in our mastermind group, heating and air mastermind group, and one of the guys come back on there and he's saying all the right things, and after he's blasted him, and then the business owner corrects him really kindly and everything else, he just comes back, oh, okay, my mistake, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's about all you'll get from him.
No accountability, no. And I slam it what it is. It's
we had like a PVC pipe that did not get glued, and it popped loose, and it hadn't even seen any condensate yet. But we got instead of the guy calling us, this was a brand new install. It popped loose. He noticed it, which I'm thankful that he did. And my guy should have caught it. It was just a mistake, a literal mistake. And instead of giving us a call so we can come out and fix it, he leaves us like a 3-star review or a 4-star review. It's like, everything's great, but this, and posted pictures of it. And we're like, dude, So the sales guy in this particular situation, the sales guy called him and said, "Hey man, like, why are you not, like, all you had to do is call us. We will come take care of this." So I tell you what, I'm going to get a guy out there like immediately. And if we do that and take care of it, can you help us out on this review? And so we did. We got out there, fixed it, and he did get back on. This was a Google review. He got back on and updated it and said, "I have never seen customer service like this before," and went on and on about how great we were. But the reality is his first initial thought was to go post a negative review versus just calling us and giving us a chance to fix it.
Well, these sting operation news people that hide cameras and they set up these quote unquote expert. I got to tell you, I'm watching some of these. I'm like, this is your expert, and he's looking at a piece of equipment and pronouncing it good. And you and I both know the measurements can be fine, but we don't have X-ray vision, and on a certain level, we can't tell so much, unless you do these in-depth, tests and in certain areas. But
even if you do, it's a mechanical piece of equipment. Anything can happen,
and it will. It's everything wears out. And what do they call that now? What do they call it when they manufacture things to last just past the warranty? Planned obsolescence, right?
Yeah,
planned obsolescence. So manufacturers in every industry have realized that when they set their, if you've noticed on your cell phones, they really do this. Once it gets past the warranty, you start to have these problems, right? And they start to phase this other stuff out and everything else. And we're seeing that you remember the the capacitors that were about the size of of a liter of Coke.
Oh, it was big as your forearm, man. Like from here to here, like and that thick.
And they lasted forever, right?
Yeah, forever.
But they had to phase them out because those were toxic, and maybe I'm sure it was. But it's just funny how everything toxic puts money in their pocket, shortens the life, creates more and you're the contractor, so you're the culprit. It was you. It wasn't the manufacturer. And and it's not, there's just some of the challenges that we have in what we do and trying to be that buffer. And all you can do is exactly what your sales guy did, is just go back there and undo that, and hopefully turn them around and get them to do a 180 like your customer did. But not everybody will do that. They'll leave it on there. That's not important to me. I'll just leave it, And
there was a time where I had that exact conversation like multiple times a week with people, like, because they would say stuff like just what you said, like, "Man, I got this old freezer. It's been working for 40 years, never been touched, still cools great, And I said, always would say, it's been kind of a trade-off, like they're trying to push for more efficient equipment. And part of that efficiency comes with the thickness of copper. We need to thin that copper so it can do a heat transfer or remove heat easily. The fins are thinner, like everything's thinner than it used to be. So it just does not last as long as it used to.
And I had a customer tell me one time, I was talking about all the innovative technologies and it's all this stuff in it. And he says, "Well, country boy, more parts and pieces it has, the more likelihood it's going to break." What could you say? Because
I don't disagree with that.
Right. So just kind of funny that you bring it up that way, but it is what it is, and we're the buffer, and we got to roll with it. But how rural were you, Kelly? What was a long service call for you? How far did you drive?
45 minutes to an hour, typically. I mean, I would say so. There were times where we would drive over an hour, like hour and 1.25 hours, something like that.
Wow.
But that would only be if the schedule was empty and we had time. If we did not have time, we're not going there. Like
you're in Missouri?
Would never take. What's that?
You were in Missouri, is that right? Your business?
No, Kansas.
In Kansas. Yeah. 6 one way, half dozen.
Same thing, same difference. Yeah.
It's all flat. I remember that, but
yeah.
but okay, Kansas. Yeah. I had some family out that way. Yeah, that's pretty. So you had to get pretty spread out, and I bet there's a lot of people
Oh yeah.
that are rural, and it's a different set of challenges. I mean, what do you do when they forget, or you call over that, you drive all the way over there and knock on the door, nobody's home, or you know,
Oh, that happens, every so often it happens. But
yeah,
that's the thing too, is if we were driving any amount of distance, we wouldn't even start heading that way until we got a hold of somebody and they knew we were on their way. But 45 minutes was nothing. Like
you,
you're gonna drive that very often to get from call to call, at least 45 minutes. So
yeah. Well, we sometimes we're doing the Mission Impossible, dun 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 dun, and I don't have time to call because I'm being efficient. I'm already over this way,
yeah,
and I, with cell phones and everything else. Remember, I'm from like the Stone Age, and so we had cell phones, but they were so expensive. We just heating and air contractors didn't tend to have them. We had beepers
yeah,
and pay phones, and between those two, we made it happen.
CB radios. We had CB radios
Breaker
back when
19.
I started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did too. Right before they went with the 800 megahertz, when they did that, the handhold walkie talkies were awesome. Those were great. We loved that. But you had to speak in code because anything you say, everybody could hear.
Yeah.
So it was 10-4,
So
obviously.
you were just talking about being efficient. What were you saying? Like getting to the oh yeah, like just running over to the next call because you're
Yeah,
like just on a mission to get things done.
right. I
Well,
remember a Mission Impossible moment, and my ex next door neighbor had bought a house, and they didn't have a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, and the oil furnace had gone out. I went over. I diagnosed it. Called my guy. He was, on our radio. Same thing. He's leaving. Dun 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 dun. And he's leaving a parts house. I go, stop. Go back in there. Give me a 3rd horsepower. Whatever frame. I can't remember what it was now. But and dun 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 dun. And we meet in the parking lot, window to window. We pass the motor. We do this, and I head back, and we knock this one out. We're kicking it. And go all the way back, write him an invoice. And he's, well, I don't have any money. Can I just pay you later? And I said, it's my next door neighbor. I said, oh yeah, sure. Never paid for it. I paid for his motor.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's my neighbor, and I what do you do?
Yeah. So you owe him, Pete. I mean, what are you bitching about?
Yeah. Well, I heard one of the pros out there talking about that. He said, if you can't profit off of your friends and family, who can you profit off of? Your enemies?
That's the thing too, because what are you going to like? Are your enemies going to hire you?
Right. And so
No.
it's your livelihood. You got to eat. So,
But you were talking about being so efficient, and that made me think of it. This is one of the first customers I ever fired. And I was, I had done several of his rental properties before, and he was really cheap. And he always wanted, this is when I first started, I was good, fast, and cheap. Well, on this particular call, I was super fast. Like I was super fast because he caught me at the right time. I was heading to the west side of town, and I'm on the bypass, and he calls me and he's like, hey, this particular house is gone down. And I said, I tell you what, it's my next exit. I'll be there in like 3 minutes. And I literally exited and got there in like 3 minutes. And it was dirty. The evaporator coil was dirty. The outdoor unit was dirty. The run capacitor was bad. The filter was dirty. It needed a little bit of refrigerant. I did all of that, and I charged like $160. And this was even after hours. This is like 7:00 at night. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time when he called.
right.
Because I was working late. Working late. It's what you did. And so I swing in there and I get this done. Like he's got cooling literally an hour after he called me. And he gets the bill, sends me back a check with a note. Well, not with a note. He did actually pay the bill, but he sends me a printout that he printed off Amazon. This is 12 years ago, probably 13 years ago, 14 years ago. Sends me this Amazon picture of a $20 run capacitor. And he was like, basically making a statement. He didn't even write anything. He just sent me this picture that he had downloaded of this one run capacitor that his unit needed that was $20 on Amazon. And that was the last call I ever did for him. I'm like, screw you, buddy. Like okay, great.
Yeah. He was just trying
why don't you order that capacitor why don't you go drive to Wichita yourself, figure it out, order the capacitor, wait 2 or 3 days for it to get here, because
And
Amazon wasn't like it is today.
yeah,
Amazon, like you, half the stuff you order on Amazon is here tomorrow. It is not like that. It
it
wasn't
was
like
not like
that
that
12
back
years
then.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No.
No,
And
yeah,
so,
they're ignorant. They just don't know, and
yeah. So he just
it,
went,
the same thing with your employees. When you hire them, they're consumers first, so they're ignorant. That's why you have to kind of educate your team so that they're comfortable charging
yeah,
what they charge. But I had one. This, talking about the radios. So I got to tell you this because this was kind of funny. We had gone out to pick up old Bessie. Bessie was a van that I had bought really early that cost me $400. But she just kept running. So I gave her a paint job. And so we used it for installs. And so we went over to pick up old Bessie. So I took my tech over and he's riding behind me and we're sitting at the traffic light. And it's right there in the entrance to the main part of the town. There's some railroad tracks on down the way and everything else. And I'm just kind of daydreaming, looking out. I'm at the red light and there's a lady pushing a car through the intersection. She's out behind pushing the car. And it was kind of comical, but because she was overweight. She was young. She was probably in her 20s or something like that, but she was overweight and out there pushing her car. And I keyed my mic, and it was that one employee that I had. And I said, "Hey, Michael, do you see what I see?" I said, "Who's driving that car?" And sure enough, she's pushing and there's nobody in the driver's seat. Well, she caught a little bit of a hill, and so she's going to run around and try to open the door. Well, the car
yeah,
starts to pick up speed. So
yeah, that's
she finally
scary.
fell to the ground. I felt sorry for her, but it was so funny at the same time. So it's picking up momentum. It's going down, and it's going with the road fine until the road starts to veer to the left. And where it veered to the left, there was an industrial building there with a parking, cars that were parked on the side, and a brand new red Trans Am sitting down there. But fortunately, there was a telephone pole kind of in the way. And here it
Yeah,
comes right for that telephone pole. It caught the curb, it jerked it just enough. You know how the telephone pole has that cable that holds it down at an angle? It went
yeah.
perfectly right between the pole and the cable and just smashed that brand new red Trans Am to pieces. And she was
Jeez.
just fit to be. I felt bad about it. And when I think about it, it's not that funny, but at the time we were laughing so hard. So,
But that's something you don't see every day, So I always liked going to work, believe it or not, like when it was super snowy and like slick as hell. I always like going to work on those days because we're all over town all day long, and you see there would be people like doing donuts right next to us as we
right,
drive by, because nobody knows how to drive on ice here.
right,
And
right.
so it's not like, up north, if you lived in like North Dakota or Michigan, or someplace that gets a lot of snow, like usually
Yeah,
those people know how to drive in that stuff because they get so used to it. But it's not
sure.
like that in Kansas. If
Yeah,
it's slick or a lot of snow, like just you drive 1 mile outside of town and there's going to be 5 cars in a ditch. And so I
yeah.
always enjoyed going to work those days. Saving the day every time you got to a house, and trotted through the snow to get into the house. I loved those days, to be honest with you.
It was a rainy day, trying to drizzly day when I lost old Bessie. So I was driving her, and I'm hauling,
Yeah.
dun 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 dun, and I'm coming around. It was a country road, and a lady was in front of me and was going to turn left into her driveway. She comes to a complete stop way short of the driveway and just stops. And I'm hitting my brakes. And so that I don't hit her, I'm pulling left to center. And here comes a pickup truck. The lady's hitting her brakes and boom, head on collision, messed up the whole front end and everything else. Well, she had a
Yeah.
child in there, and I'm jumping, I'm running over there. Is the baby okay? And she gets out, says the baby's okay. She looks at me and she looked at the old lady and went to cussing the old lady out because she saw what the lady did, right? So it was obvious.
Yeah.
They took her and the little boy to the hospital because they were going to check them out. And then the state trooper shows up. Well, he says, measure, by the measurement of your skid marks, you were the one that was exceeding speed, and I'm going to give you a ticket. I said, no, 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 no. I said, if I'm at fault, why did she attack this lady for being at fault? You at least talk to her. these skid marks are this distant because that sucker weighs a lot. We're going downhill, and it's hard to stop something this heavy. And he went, and long story short, they did not cite me at fault. There was no fault. And I saw the lady in the hardware store a year or so later, and I said, "You look familiar. Do I know you?" She said, I should look familiar. We met head on about a year ago, and whatnot. But yeah, that was the end of old Bessie. He kind of messed her up, and I went ahead and turned her in at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, we sold my very first van. Really just, it was probably 2020, 2019, 2020. So she was with me since the beginning. Like I drove the living crud out of that van, and it so many late nights and long weeks, and it was a good van. It still ran.
Yeah.
But it had been in a couple fender
Is that the one
too.
that you had the picture in front of back before you rebranded everything? Yeah, I remember that.
That's it. Yep.
Did you give her a name?
That was the first one.
No name?
No, I've never been one to name vehicles. I don't know why, but
she was called my van. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, good.
Well, it had the smaller motor in it. It was a quarter, a half ton. It was a half ton with the small motor. It wasn't even the bigger engine, but man, that thing, it got to where it wasn't super powerful. So if you had a big old unit in the back, it took a minute to get up to speed, but for so many years it did really well. And that thing hauled so much equipment, just unreal. That was a workhorse.
I had a guy pull out in front of me. I had to slam on my brakes one time, and it was old Bessie. And I had taken a blower motor, or I don't even know what horsepower this was. It was this big. You couldn't put your arms around it. It was that big. And so we had a crane. I set it right in the back. We're going to take it over and have it rewound. And so I sat in the very back of the truck. I'll just go slow. And I'm going, but this old man pulled right out in front of me, and I slammed, and here comes that motor. I didn't even have the thing in the back, the metal divider
bulkhead.
It comes and I pumped my brakes so it would kind of grab, because I did have a piece of plywood, like a plywood floor down, so that it had a little bit of friction, not like it was just bare metal.
Yeah.
And it finally grabbed a little bit because I'm pumping the brakes, and I'm right up on this guy's bumper, and he stops. I get out, and I'm going to go off on this guy. Well, it was an older man, and he's ducking like I'm getting ready to hit him, and I'm like, I said, "You pulled it." I wasn't going to hit the guy, but then I felt bad because I scared him, but it scared me, but learned to tie stuff down after that. Yeah, old Bessie and I've been through a few things, my friend. I had to give her a name. I couldn't just go around and let her go unnamed.
I had several old vans. Like my very first van, I worked for a company called Climatech many years ago, and that was my first van because I started with my father-in-law, and then I decided I didn't want to do this for a summer, and I went to work for Purina Mills, where I worked in the warehouse for one summer, and then I went back to work, and that's when I went back to work for Purina Mills, I believe was my journey. And then or Climatech, went back to work. When I went back to heating and air, I went
back to Climatech.
Yeah. And so the van that I had there, every time I hit a puddle, it would stall out. And I just have to sit. I just had to sit for like 2 hours, and it just would not start. And then finally it would start after it dried out. And the top speed on that van was about 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So anytime you got, that's floored. Like you had the pedal to the metal, and you'd go up to the top of a hill. By the time I got to the top of the hill, just on a highway, like I would be down to like 40 or 45 mile an hour. It just could not keep up. It was horrible.
Just all that. Yeah, she runs good. Just don't hit the high beams. She'll stall on you every time.
That's middle hilarious. Of so many times, even like at the traffic, the rush hour traffic at 4:30 in the afternoon, everyone getting off work and going home, and I'd be stuck at a stoplight because it would stall out on me.
I hated that. Yeah, there's nothing worse. when it breaks down all the time. But you know what? It's good for you. I think it builds character, and you definitely learn auto mechanics. Before you and I met tonight, I've got a client I coach, and he's such a good guy. He's really smart. He's really good tech. And he only buys Chevys because he can work on them. And so he says, one of my techs needs a water pump. No worries. I'm out at night. I change it. Next morning, he goes right off to work, and he does that. He does his own auto mechanics. But, we don't start off that way. You got to get out there and get dirty. And, that's the beauty about what we do is it's so universal and there's so much that is related that you could figure stuff out,
You could, but I chose not to. I had too many weekends where it's like, even before I got into the heating and air conditioning business,
right.
I had too many weekends where it's like, we're going to change this water pump. Yeah, it's only going to take us 2 hours. Let's run down to O'Reilly's and grab one. And 8 hours later, I'm pissed and I'm tired and, my arms are all cut up and it's still not running. Like I had too many of those experiences. So I was like, nope, if we have car problems, it's going in. Like literally just this week, I've had no problem. I got a Countryman Mini Cooper and we've had no problems with it. We've had it like a Mini Cooper. Yeah.
Aren't you like 6'2"? You're a pretty big guy,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Are they that roomy?
It's a Countryman. So the Countrymans they have like a SUV base. So they're bigger and they sit up a little higher. It's still like to get in and out of it. It's still pretty low, but like I test drove one of their, just their sports or whatever they call them. It was like a racing, like you had the racing seats and stuff. And it had this little thing that you flipped up on the dash that displayed your mile per hour. So you wouldn't take you can see how fast you're going without taking your eyes off the road. Wow. And I just didn't like that because it felt too cramped. But the Countryman, there's plenty of room, man. It's no big deal. But anyhow, it just wouldn't start the other day. First time we've had any trouble with it. Wouldn't start. And I look it up online. I go to YouTube University and I'm pretty certain it's the battery. And I was able to jump it one time. I got my 2005 Dodge pickup. I pulled it up and was able to jump start it one time. I let it run for 20 to 30 minutes. And then I shut it off and then I turned it back on. It started up and then I shut it off and then it sat over the weekend. So I thought, so this was last Friday. So my wife calls and gets us an appointment because we're going to have it looked at. I see the battery and it's like tucked up under the dash and you got to take a bunch of stuff apart.
Yeah.
Like it even has like ports with special fittings on the battery that pop up this piece of metal above the port just so you can jump it. So you can't really access the cables without taking a bunch of stuff apart. And I was like, I'm not dealing with this,
Yeah.
So, and I could, and what if I go get a battery and that's not what it is because I'm not a mechanic and I'm not trying to be one.
Right.
And so we get ready to go work out. And I figured we'll just jump it. We'll drive to the workout and it'll probably start after the workout since it'll have some run time. Well, I could not get it started. So we go ahead and go to, jump in the old Dodge pickup and go work out. We come back home. I jack with it for 40 minutes trying to get this thing started. Finally, just call to get it towed in. And it was just the battery. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how, like with vehicles, I'll change a blinker or something or a headlamp, but I am not interested in working on them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will pay somebody. It's just worth it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't learn anything when I had to drive crappy vehicles. I didn't learn anything other than if I sit here for at least 2 hours, this thing will start once it dries out.
A lot of times your time is just better spent doing something else, and it's just cheaper for you to pay somebody else. And then too, I remember that kicking in because I always bought used vehicles, old vehicles, but the regular breakdowns and just the nonstop issues they really could have been a car payment. And so I started to understand why people would just buy new all the time. And I did that for a
Yeah.
little bit, but I ended up going back to like a 2-year-old vehicle. It just seemed like to be the best investment for me. I can't say that now, but that was kind of the way I was back in the 90s. And, you know, I bought a 2007 BMW. That was a mistake. I bought a 335i coupe. It was fun. It was 2 years old. So, or right at 2 years old, just out of warranty, or just got out of warranty. Headlight goes out. $1,500 just for the headlight. And this was back in 2009. It was, I said, I got rid of the car. I refused to pay that because by the time you got labor and everything else, it was crazy.
One of our wipers went bad. I don't know, 2 years after we had the car. We bought it slightly used, had like 5,000 miles on it when we bought it. And the wiper went bad. It was like $80 or $90 because you had to buy the pair. You can't just buy one. And that's the most I had ever spent for a pair of wipers before. And then this battery, it was like by the time labor and everything, it was $365, which I know batteries are way more expensive than they used to be. But it just is what it is. It's worth it to me not have to deal with it. So
at least it wasn't $1,200 for a blower motor.
Yeah, no.
Bad review on
and
that.
To get it towed, it was really reasonable to get it towed, even though I had to drive it like 10 miles or whatever. It was like $120 or $30. It was hardly anything. So overall, other than that, it's been a great car. So I'm keeping it for a while.
That's good. That's good. Well, Kelly, we're coming up on the hour. I have to say that this particular episode has been the most informative for HVAC business that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you want transformation, you better go back and rewatch what you just heard.
I think, right. I think we ought to pass the guilt to the listener. We're not getting enough recommendations. What do you want to hear about on the comments?
That's right.
Or, you know, and so, hey, this is your fault. If you thought I'll never get this hour back, shit, I got to listen to something else. This is your fault. But no, but it's fun to kind of reminisce and, you know, connect to some of those old times. And because some of that stuff, I mean, a lot of my really young customers, you know, in their mid-20s, they look at me like, you know, I had my business in another time, and I'm telling you, it was not that different. It just wasn't. Technology's
not at all.
Communications improved, but you know, I go change that same compressor. I mean, inverter systems and stuff like that, right? Communicating, but still, I mean, come on.
Yeah, sure, that's a little different, but other than that, I mean, the work is still hard. You're still going to sweat a lot. You're still going to have to deal with customers. You're still going to have to.
People are still people. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's none of that's changed. It's one thing that I'll tell you, if I had one regret through the whole process of growing my business. So here's your gold nugget. If you've been waiting for it, anybody who's listening, still, take more pictures of you. Like, get pictures of you out in the field, get pictures of you like standing with your crew, like take pictures, because there's going to be a day where you would love to go back and just see how dirty you came home every night. Like, because I was filthy. I'd come home filthy. It was nothing. Every single summer day, I'd come home with a dirt necklace, you know, because I worked my ass off.
Yeah.
And I wish I had pictures of some of that stuff just so I could look back and say, man, I remember those times.
I agree. And don't store them because you're digital now. We had to have the film expose everything else. I lost ours too because I had all that stuff in storage and it got gone. I had some people throw it all away, you know, think it was garbage. But anyway, don't store it on a single disk hard drive. You got to get those like parallel systems or pay for the storage or whatever you got to do, but you know, or print them. Yeah. I don't know, but yeah, preserve them. And,
or, you know, absolutely. Like Google Photos or, whatever.
I don't
store them on your hard drive
also,
but even that's scary because if the hard drive fails, then you're going to lose everything. But
I come across some photos with all my plaques, you know, like our dealer awards and, you know, all the different accolades over the years. I've come across that. That was in one of my hard drives that I was actually, you know, looking for I think I was looking for my DD 214 because I makes military and I've got some VA benefits and stuff like that. And so I had to go through all that old stuff. And every once in a while, I come across a gym. But yeah, definitely want to document the journey and
Yes.
realize that right now, all this difficulty, these are your stories, going forward. It doesn't feel like it in the
Yep.
moment, but that destination, that goal, that's way out. You got to enjoy the journey and have fun, laugh, find people you like to work with that you can laugh with, and
Don't
just
take it so seriously, which is
easier
hard to
said,
do for
easier said than
business
done. Yeah,
owners, but
yeah,
you
yeah.
really shouldn't. It's
Yeah. I always tell some of my customers I feel like a therapist because I sit there and listen to them complain. I had this guy, you wouldn't believe what I went through, and I'm like, breathe.
yeah, yeah.
It's like therapy, just a vent. But and that's why having a good peer group's good. If you're not one of the mastermind groups, you ought to consider that. Those are fun. I know Kelly's got some, we've got some. So you may jump in, and then you realize, wow, they've got the same problems that I do, and
You are not alone. Trust me. Like everyone struggles with the same stuff. And I think I
sure.
talked about this, but when I talked in Indiana, they had like one of the local people there who had supposedly a great culture, and they were talking about what they've done to make their culture great.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm not saying they didn't have a great culture. Maybe they did, but somebody asked a question of like, what do you do when you slow down? When you don't have, like, we're going to be, let's say in March when the phones stop ringing and you're kind of in between seasons or whatever. And those guys are dealing with the exact same thing that a 3-man shop is dealing with.
Yeah.
It's just a different level. That's all, but it's the same problems. It's the same challenges. It's the same obstacles. So if you think you're ever going to get to this point where just everything is just smooth sailing and la-di-da and rainbows and unicorns and butterflies, it's not going to happen. I'm here to tell you it doesn't happen. Now, what does happen is you can hire managers to take care of that stuff for you so that it's not you dealing with it every day. But those things don't go away. Employee problems, employee challenges, customer challenges, whatever, supply house challenges, they never, ever go away. It's just part of the business. But you can separate yourself from it by having people in between, you and that, whatever it is. So things can get better and easier for you as your job changes and your roles and responsibilities change as the business grows. But I guess you get what I'm saying, Pete. Like there's some
Sure.
things that are just always going to be there. So
There
don't think
are,
that,
but
yeah,
every challenge is an opportunity to learn and adjust. We used to have a joke that when it got when it really slowed down, we'd send somebody door to door with business cards and door hangers in the front yard, and somebody with wire snips and snipping thermostat wire in the backyard. It was just a joke. We'd never do anything like that, but it was just kind of a joke. What are we going to do? But when you adjust and you realize the disciplines, all these disciplines for the strategy, you got to have. You can't build a business around demand service alone. The weather. That's my marketing. So
right.
You've got to document these things. You've got to follow up when things slow down. And guess what? All the seeds have been planted. You've got all this organized. You start calling these people back. Next thing you know, you have one thing leads to another and another. And of course, preventive maintenance is a no-brainer. If you're coming back for planned maintenance, you get to choose that time. You get to choose when you're slow, and
Yeah.
you'll discover new opportunities or new strategies. But just remember, every problem, every challenge is an opportunity to adjust, and it's a call to action. You better do it, or it's not going to go away. Life in business will continue to teach you the same lessons over and over and over, season after season, year after year, until you learn those lessons and make the adjustments needed.
Everything is feedback. Everything's feedback. It's all telling you something.
Everything's feedback like that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Kelly. We said we keep it to 45
right.
minutes. I think we're at an hour and 45. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention. Well, we're over an hour. I know that, and
Yeah.
statistics say that people stop listening about 45 minutes, so we're probably talking alone
But
anyway.
nobody's even heard us for the last 20 minutes. So
Okay, yeah.
it's all
Here's what we do:
good.
if you put a comment and say, "I heard the very ending," we're going to send you something in an email. What do you send something? I'll send something. Send them
Yeah.
a free something. Free.
A free training of some kind. I'll send you something for
There you
sure.
go. Let's do that. Okay. So we'll
Yeah.
see who's paying attention, who's being naughty, and who's being nice. We'll see who's paying attention out there. That'll
Yep.
be fun. All right, man. Great job. You opened up, so close us out.
Hey, it's been fun. It's been real. We definitely covered a lot of subjects. Hopefully you guys can relate to some of our stories, and you may have experienced it, and maybe who knows, you found some type of a resolve or something that you could do that mimics what we did, that, hey, we're still here, so it had to work out for us to some degree. So
See,
so hopefully, yeah.
old retired technicians still can be useful in a society. But today's standard.
Right.
That was a Dumb and Dumber line. I butchered it, but yeah. Well,
So
thank you, Kelly. I appreciate you, man. And
yeah, thanks, Pete. It's always fun.
okay,
So we'll see you guys later, and be sure to do what Pete said. If you
yeah,
comment something,
yeah,
we'll send
and
you something. So
yeah, and watch out for the red ass. See you guys on the next one.
yeah, see you
Bye
guys.
bye.